Hello and welcome. Today I'm adding Boogerman from the Interplay Collection 1 to my ever-growing list where I rank every Evercade game ever. Originally released in 1995, it was primarily developed for the Sega Mega Drive and later ported to the Super Nintendo, which is the version we have on the Evercade. As the title and what you can see on screen no doubt suggests, it's a platform game with a sense of humour which is clearly very prepubescent. I'm pretty sure I would have loved this back in the day if I was 8 when it came out. But I wasn't. Being somewhat older than that, it was an easy one for me to give a miss. So there's no nostalgia here, although it was a game that I was familiar with, just one I'd never bothered to check out until I got on the Evercade. There is a story to it all, but it's as bonkers and nonsensical as you would imagine given the title and the kind of humour it indulges in. Let's just say you're Boogerman and you're going to take out some bad guy and you have to fight through various levels and bosses to do so. Anyway, let's get on to breaking it down, starting with the
graphics.
Right, might as well get this out of the way. Graphically, it's pretty damn solid. Whether you like the visual style or not's a different matter, but the characters are really well animated, and it's not just Boogerman himself, who I'd say equals or maybe even surpasses Earthworm Jim in its quality of animation, but the enemy sprites are also really well animated, as are the bosses. The backgrounds are less detailed, but they do retain these very cartoony look, and although it lacks in parallax scrolling or really iconic looking levels, it does maintain a very consistent style throughout. Of course, that style is, to be perfectly honest, I think it's rather unappealing. Boogerman looks like a gross out take on something like Banana Man, a ridiculously proportioned and hideously ugly looking character. And I'm not because of all the bogies and things like that, but because he looks like he's just come straight out of the Dandy or Viz or something. But that said, it is the style it's going for and it does it really well, so that I guess it's just personal preference, and if you happen to like the style then maybe it'll do more for you than it does me. Other than that, I would say the game is very colourful and it absolutely nails the cartoon look as I mentioned earlier, so graphically I think it's a very solid game.
Sound of music.
I had to double check whether this was the Super Nintendo or Mega Drive version because, well, it sounds a bit like a Mega Drive game in many ways. It doesn't really make use of the Super Nintendo sound chip. The various sound effects are suitably squelchy and they are effective in that respect. And it's certainly not a bad sounding game overall. But I do find that the music is rather lacking. It's fairly bass driven and lively. The overall feel of it does suit a sort of gross out platformer, but there's no amazing or memorable tunes, it's just there and doesn't really add anything to the game at all. It's, like I said, it's just it's cosmetic, it's there, you notice it, it's relatively inoffensive, but yeah, just there.
Gameplay.
Well, the gameplay is a mixed bag. Boogerman has a reasonable amount of moves. He can run and jump, he can flick his bogies to take out enemies, he can fart to take out enemies, he can get chili peppers to allow him brief bits of flight, he can swing from rope to rope and slide down snot covered ropes. And he's always well animated when doing it, but that animation comes at a cost. The movement and hit detection feel a little bit off, a little bit imprecise. The movement often feels a little bit floaty, particularly the jumps, and again it's not terrible, but it is there. Although I found that quite common of the various platform games that came out in the wake of Aladdin and Earthworm Jim. The way information is presented on the screen is quite novel. Your hits or hit points or health, whatever you want to call it, are indicated by the colour of Boogerman's cape. You have a limited amount of fart and bogey energy, although pickups will refill it, and he's displayed in suitably in suitable fashion, I suppose, with a finger dragging out a long bogey in the top left corner for your bogey ammunition, or booger ammunition for Americans, which would be appropriate given the title of the game. Anyway, so I say there's a few novel takes on things, although there's nothing wholly original about it. The various worlds you go up to are split into, I think it's 4 or 5 levels, or 4 levels and a boss, and each has their own tile set or design for that level, but the levels themselves don't really feel that varied or unique. And the enemy placement and level design, well, the levels are often quite large with a bit of exploration, which isn't a bad thing. There are items to collect, but the pacing of the game and the difficulty, it's just not all that good level design. It just feels like they've made a design for the tile set for that level and decided, right, yeah, we'll stick some enemies here, put some here, without too much thought about the progression through the levels. And you rarely get into a good flow of gameplay. It just feels a bit stop-starty while you have to edge forward, because if you charge on through, enemies will hit you and you'll end up dying. As Boogerman's position on the screen while scrolling along doesn't really give you much time to react effectively, but even that isn't too egregious, and overall the level design is more bland and uninspired as opposed to terrible. The bosses aren't too bad, they provide a little bit of a challenger, they look great, they're well animated, but all in all the game just comes down to being rather average, and prolonged play sessions tend to get a little bit monotonous.
Overall opinion.
Boogerman is a well presented game with a reasonable amount going for it, dependent on your tolerance for such juvenile humour, but the designers clearly knew who their target audience was, and many of those probably wouldn't be too disappointed with the gameplay being a bit uninspired. So overall I think the game is perfectly fine. Like I said, great presentation, reasonable music, bog standard gameplay that gets a bit monotonous, but there's nothing truly terrible or awful about it. It's just a bit mediocre.
Ranking.
Placing Boogerman on my ever-growing list where I rank every Evercade game ever, I'm going to place it above Windjammers but below Buggy, placing it at 212 out of 396 games that I've ranked so far. Anyway, I think that's enough for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.